telling us what your name was when you were born.
Solomon Max Zimmelman. That's what I was born, and that was in 1939.
And where were you born?
I was born in Montreal, in Canada, where my father came off the boat 1939, just before the war started, in September, and I was born August. And it was amazing that he went, because they were not letting Jews or anybody from Russia into America. So where did he go? He went to Nova Scotia. And very luckily, my mother's brothers, who were down in Nassau, Bahamas, they were all down there. They had come 10, 15 years prior. They all came over in the late 20s, early 30s. And they went to Nassau. And they had businesses. In fact, they still have businesses. Some of them are still alive. And most of them, unfortunately, have gone. All of Hashem, my uncles. But my father came in through Nova Scotia and left on a minute's notice, left his home, left everything, and decided to go to when someone was able to put some money down, because they had to put down $25,000 per family to get into Canada or United States. It was probably the same thing prior, so that they wouldn't be a burden on the government. My father immediately got himself a job as a cantor for the high holidays, because it was in September. He got himself, it was just, I think, a few days before the holidays. I mean, a month or so before the high holidays. And he was able to get himself his first job. My father had an unbelievable, beautiful sounding voice. Gorgeous. And so after that, we moved to Montreal. That's where we first started. And in Montreal, he was doing shrita, which is the killing of kosher animals, and he was doing the mila, and he was doing cantor. He got himself a job. So he was immediately trying to make a living with whichever way he could, because he came with my three older brothers, which were Milton, Ralph, and Sidney, my older brothers. And my older brother Sidney, who was a rabbi, who was a genius. He's a Talmud scholar. He's a what I have done in music, he has done in Jewish scholarly learning. And then it was, of course, Ralph, who was a businessman, and my oldest brother, Milton. So they came, needed something to be part of, and they started going to school. I was born. My father moved 2 years later to Toronto. And in Toronto, we stayed till I was about 5.
And where was your family from?
From Lomże, Lamaz in Europe. It's in Poland. And it's White Russia, basically. It's part of White Russia. But it's shifted, as you know, a lot of things have shifted in Russia. And in Poland. And he was his father was the Moel, Shochet, and Cantor in that town, for that entire town of Lamaz, as they call it in English, Lomże, not too far from Bialystok, maybe like from here to the city, a half hour, near Bialystok, near Grodno, Near they had all little shtetl. In Europe, it was the shtetl was famous. So that's where my family originally came from. And my father married a girl, my mother, Ida, who was from the same town.
And your father was fourth generation?
Fourth generation. I'm fifth.
So at what point, as a young man, were you aware of the tradition that was part of your family?
At the age of probably as soon as I could talk, and that wasn't too early because I spoke Yiddish before I spoke English. Growing up in Toronto, Toronto where I really learned how to speak English, my father and mother spoke Yiddish at home. They all spoke Yiddish. My brothers had just come over. They don't even remember. So they didn't even speak English. But of course, you don't even detect any accent. They speak perfect English. But we had a tremendous in Toronto. My father decided America was the place, and he came to America, and he got himself a job in Portland, Maine. Portland, Maine is an area where he was in a large Orthodox congregation, the largest in Portland. Portland only had maybe 5,000 Jews, not more. But again, he was the cantor, the moil, and the shochet for that entire, not only Portland, Lewiston, Bangor. He went up and down the entire state of Maine as a moel, and for shchita, for doing kosher slaughtering. That's basically, and he was in that synagogue for his entire life. 30.
What was life like for you in Maine? Can you describe your home and
my home? We lived.
How it felt to live there?
I'll tell you. For me, I didn't know anything different. I basically was I was very young, and I was just learning. My father put me first in regular school, and then he decided at one point, he said, he sent my older brother to the yeshiva in New York. My older brothers, they both went to Yeshiva Torah B'das. That's where they went in Brooklyn, Williamsburg, where it was at that time. A very, very ultra-Orthodox school. And they lived in a dormitory. And at the age of 7, I was sent away also. In fact, I have a song that I wrote about my life called Papa. And because here I remember leaving the house in the middle of the night, taking a Greyhound bus to New York. I'll never forget crying like a baby. How my father said, "You've got to go. Otherwise, you will not get a Jewish education here. You've got to go to New York." He went with me, took me hand by hand, took me to the yeshiva, and then the next thing he did, because don't forget, I was on the pulpit, even in Toronto, at the age of 3. That's what he tells me. I don't remember. And I was on the pulpit singing. I couldn't talk yet, but I could sing. Amazing, huh?
Did you feel deserted?
I didn't know what I felt. I felt lonely, but my father, we were all, it wasn't like you argue with your parents like today, where you say, "I don't want to go." Or even the way I did once I went to high school. But that's later on. So I went and the first thing my father did was he said, "I'm putting you in a choir, a professional choir." Because I had, it seems, I don't know, I have tapes of my voice. I have about 20 tapes of my voice when I was a child, and singing with some of the great teachers of cantors, because he sent me to a guy by the name of Joshua Weiser. Joshua Weiser used to teach Richard Tucker, used to teach Erla Diamond, used to teach Waldman. He taught so many different people the cantorial art. And here I'm a little kid. I'm 7.5 in New York. So I was in his choir. In fact, the first job I had, professional, was singing in the Flagler Hotel for Passover up in the mountains, in the Catskill Mountains. So from there, so I was in a choir. From Weiser, I went to, then Weiser unfortunately died. I went to a guy by the name of, so my father came to New York again. The first thing he wanted is, I want you to, he's got to go, put me in another choir. Put me in, he tried Silberman's. From there, from Silberman's, went to Sterner. The first question my father would say is, I want to know, are you going to teach him music? He says, well, I don't have the time to teach him music. I'm not going to teach this kid music. It's a kid. I want him to take lessons every week, he would say. In Yiddish. Ich will also lernen music. And I said, it was a burden for me. So, but he started, Sterner didn't want, the other ones didn't want. The only one that wanted to teach me was finally Oscar Julius. And I was with Oscar Julius for the remainder of, till I was 13.5 when I lost my voice. I was the Vimali boy. He used to shift me from, I used to sing up at the Concord Hotel because I was the soloist in the choir. You had about 25 people in the choir. I was the soloist. Sent me, for one Passover, he'd send me to the Concord, once to Grossingers, once to the, where was it? I think it was the, where Tucker was, Pines, at first. And I was, as a young, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I must tell you that it was like, very unusual for me, because I was doing a balancing act. Here I'm a young boy going to a very religious school. On Saturday, Friday night, I should say, and Saturday, I'd go away to sing for a weekend. And singing for a weekend was with a choir. And it's a completely different atmosphere. It was an Orthodox synagogue, but it was more of it wasn't as, as orthodox as so I was getting two sides of Judaic, style of living. The next thing that happened was, from the school, I would also take music lessons, as I told you. I would go on the train on a regular basis. I would go on the train every single weekend. Today, children don't do that. When I did a wedding on a Saturday night or a Sunday afternoon or Sunday night, I would come back at 1 in the morning and 2 in the morning with my little suitcase with my gown in it. All right? It's amazing that I think about what I did as a kid, that in doing all of the singing. Don't forget, I used to go around, if I could have had 2 or 3 weddings in one night. One night. As a Vimale boy. I'd go from the Park Manor to the Aperian Manor to these were catering halls where they had major weddings.
What's a Vimali boy?
Vimali boy means that I sang Vimale, blessing the bride and groom. It was part of a prayer in the liturgy called Av Harachamim, Hu Yirachem Amamutim. So, and every week I would also take lessons with Oscar Julius. I was learning theory, harmony, counterpoint, writing, everything. The only thing I didn't learn was piano. I was learning conducting. In fact, when I finished singing as a soloist, I must tell you, I started conducting choirs for the holy days, for Sabbath, for doing it for on Passover. I was doing conducting. Well, while my voice was changing from the age of 13 and a half to about, I'd say, 17. At the age of 18 and a half, I took my first job. And that was as a cantor out in Temple Shalom. By the way, at that time, I just want to bring up a story of, just to roll it back a little bit. I was probably one of the biggest fundraisers for the Yeshiva Torah Vodaas at the time. Yeshiva Torah Vodaas. What did I do? I used to go into the trains, since I used to travel trains constantly, and I used to go with a pushka and I used to say, "Ladies and gentlemen," before it would start, before the doors would close. "I want to have your attention for a moment, please. It's very important that," because that was Israel was 1948. And that's when I used to raise so much money. We used to go in front of a bank with a big sheet. People would throw in money. I used to stand there with my older brother.
Were you hearing any secular music at this time?
Nothing. Oh, yes. I'll tell you the first time I heard secular music. Because don't forget, living in a dormitory is not living at home. I didn't have TV. I didn't have radio in a dormitory. Nothing like that. Secular music. The first time I heard secular music was when I went to the hospital in Brooklyn. I had scarlet fever. And they were pumping me. In fact, I probably got it because they were pumping me with, I'll never forget, penicillin. And that's the only thing that helped take away the scarlet fever. And my recollection was, I'm listening to the radio, and because they had a little radio in my room, and all of a sudden, all I hear is this glorious voice. And who was it? Mario Lanza. That's the first time. And when I heard him sing, "Be my love, for no one else can tell," I went out of my mind. I said, "My God," because all I had heard till then was chazonis, cantorial music. All I had heard. I heard from the greatest cantors, but pop music? No. That was the first time. So again, I wasn't drawn toward it, but it was the first song that I had ever heard. And he used to have a show on the radio. Now, as far as TV was concerned, I never watched TV until, in fact, the TV used to be so, when I was growing up, I think, the first time I ever saw TV was when I went into high school, because I left Torah Vodaas. I left because if I was going out with a girl, I got a crush on a girl that I was found, and all of a sudden they said to me, "You can't do this here." "Sorry." I said, "What?" The next thing I did is I called my father. I said, "Pa, I'm going to Yeshiva University High School." "What? What are you talking about?" he would say. I said, "Pa, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to Yeshiva University High School. I'm going to take the test." He said, "Oh, but it costs a sach geld." "Pa, I'll get a scholarship." I got a scholarship. I went, I took the test, I was accepted, and that's where I went to high school. Only the last 2 years of high school at the Yeshiva University High School, where I, by the way, also wrote the alma mater. First pop song I ever wrote.
Was there a moment for you? I mean, you basically talked, up through 17 or 18 years old now of a trajectory that kind of existed for you from the moment you were born.
Correct. Well, it's something that I loved and I pursued. At one time, to answer your question, I loved cantorial music. And I wanted to be the greatest cantor in the world. And that's what I focused in on that. But then I became 21 and I started loving not only cantorial music, I started loving opera. So, but let me go, does that answer your question?
Well, I was just curious if there was a moment in your youth where you took a step back and thought, maybe I want to pursue something else. Or...
Never. I knew I wanted music. But I was very sheltered. I was sheltered. Though I lived two different styles of life, being in a choir, going all over the place by myself, and my older brother Sidney, who really took care of me quite a bit. He was really very close with me, and he used to take me to a lot of the weddings sometime. But then later on, when I was about 9 years old, I went myself. 10. Then, so I was sheltered. I wasn't exposed to anything but Judaism, and Jewish singing. I would walk down, when I was in Williamsburg on a weekend, I would walk down Bedford Avenue, and I could hear, I was always drawn into these places. The Gera Rebbe, the Kapishnitzer Rebbe, the Bostoner Rebbe, the Skver Rebbe. These were dynasties of rabbis, of rebbes. I shouldn't say rabbis, rebbes, who had and everyone you went to, that you would hear Nagina, you would hear a song. And I would listen to the songs, and it was just seeping into my bones. I lived it. And I don't know what drew me there, but it was the music. It wasn't going in there to have some shraim, as they would say, some Jewish, where the Rebbe used to take some soup, and then he would pass the plate, and everybody would take a sip of the soup because he tasted the soup. I didn't go there for that purpose, because I wasn't one of these Hasidim. I was a yeshiva bacher. I was going to a yeshiva where they didn't expect me to go to these things, but that's what I did.
Which cantors influenced you?
Well, mostly when I listened as a young man, and I would put on the records that I wanted to listen to.
Where was the record player?
Record player, I didn't have it in New York. I only had it when I was at home. When did I go home? Because don't forget, I lived away from home, right? I went home in the summertime, between the ages of 7 to the age of 17. Those growing years, I would go home during the summertime, except for 1 year where I went to camp. And it was called Camp Kolrina, it was a musical camp. What I did is, at home, I would sit and listen and listen. I just loved it. It just went into my, as they would say, my kishkas, into my body, and it took me over. What did I listen to? Hirschman, Cantor Mordechai Hirschman, Cantor Kusevitsky, Moshe Kusevitsky, and David Kusevitsky, Moshe Oisher, Cantor Malofsky. These were the people that I only those people. I really didn't branch out to listen to Reutmann and Chagi and all of the other ones, because each one of these people that I listened to had a spark that infiltrated my mind and infiltrated my senses of what I want, and I wanted to emulate them.
So since most of the cantors you were listening to are more or less working with similar repertoires of songs.
What makes a cantor is a style.
So I was going to ask you, what is it for you? If you could talk about that, how do you define cantorial style? If all 5 of those men were singing the same song, what is it that makes their performance unique?
I'll tell you. Number one, to give you the variants, David Kosovitsky and Moshe Kosovitsky had phenomenal voices, which most of these people that I spoke to you about did. But they had a way of, they were so professional and they were exciting. I loved the excitement they made me feel. It's like when you're listening to something and you look at the liturgy and you see what he is interpreting and you say, my God, what a genius. Now, he didn't write all his material, but he elaborated on the material that was written and made it his. Each one of these people, whether it was Hirschman, Kosovitsky, it's like an opera singer who would take an aria and they have their own interpretation. They make it they make it their own. They make it something a little different. Even though you have a conductor who's in front of the orchestra, and you can't change too much when you do Verdi or Puccini or Hugo Wolf or Wagner, whatever you're doing. It's a completely different, everything's a different style. I believe that the style, and Moshe Osher was genius. But he took his love of Yiddish theater, where he came from, Bessarabia, and his Romania style, that type of background, and he developed it. Moshe Kosovitsky had a certain elegance, stolz, a elegance which very few people, in fact, when I was one of his few students, the only two students he ever had, Moshe, was Saul Zim, Paul Zim. Those are the only two students he had. And what I wanted to learn from him was not a piece, not the things that he had on his records. I was interested in doing one thing. How do you think? How do you think when you take a piece of liturgy, a piece of the prayer book? How do you interpret it? What makes you think this way? What makes you want to, and what is it that makes people want to feel that excitement that you do, that you have created in your styling, which became a saying, lo come to Moshe. There was no one like Moshe Kosovitsky. I must tell you that. In professionalism, as a cantor. And because it was a certain elegance, a gestalt, a style that you will never see on anybody else. Moshe, his brother David, also had an elegance, but he had more sweetness in his voice. Sweetness. Let's see, who else? Hirschman was before my time. I never heard him in the synagogue. Don't forget, I sang. I studied with Moshe and David, but I never sang with Hirschman. But in my lessons with Moshe Kosovitsky, he told me, he said when he heard his first record, he said, I wanted to be like Hirschman, who was 15 and 20 years earlier when he was growing up.
So what would you say is the Saul Zim style? What makes a particular performance, or even when listening to a recording, how we would know that's Saul Zim?
You can tell. I have developed that same type of excitement in certain things. In what I do, I like energizing. I like taking milim, words, and interpreting them. When I write, I like to interpret. Anything I do, cantorial or pop or rock or Hasidic.
Can you give us an example?
Like maybe a verse that you could compare how someone else would sing it versus how you would sing it.
For example, I'll start a song like a piece of liturgy, something from Pirkei Avot, the sayings of our fathers. I would sing, I started off, Al Shlosh shadevarim ha'olam ha'olam oimet ala Torah. But it's I start then all of a sudden, Allah Torah. I have incorporated excitement with interpretation, with the participation of congregation or audience. I've made it my business to do everything that way, because especially in terms of liturgy has a certain thing that you must interpret. And in the 21st century, a lot of the people do not understand the liturgy. You have to interpret it for them. So even though they don't understand it, they will feel it, and they'll say, and then they'll take a look at the English and they'll say, oh, no wonder he's doing it this way.
So when you mentioned around when you were 20, you first heard opera.
21, I started thinking about opera because I had just graduated the seminary, the Jewish Theological Seminary, because that's where I went after Yeshiva University High School. And I decided that, I had a part-time job on weekends where I met my wife June. She invited me for, not she, but her father was the ritual vice president of the synagogue. He invited me for dinner, and I stayed. That's the end of the story. And
Do you remember the first time you laid eyes on Jesus?
Yes. I actually was going with a cantor's daughter in Washington, D.C. I was going with somebody else, but she moved away, and we weren't seeing each other, and I was about 17, 18. While I was at University High School, I told you, at Torah Vodaas, they wouldn't let me go out with girls. Over at Yeshiva University High School, I was able to do all I wanted. Okay? Living in a dormitory there was fun. So, yes, the first time I laid eyes on June was, her father said to her, I was doing a rehearsal for the High Holy Days. It was mid-August, and her father said, he was in the synagogue. It was after a choir rehearsal. June, take the cantor to the railroad station. I didn't have a car yet, so he took me to the Westbury. She took me to the train. Was about 45 minutes late. So she said, "You know what? Let's go over to the they had a fair." So she took me over to the fair, and so I stayed with her, and I missed the next train too.
So, just so we understand, Torah Vodaas was quite orthodox.
Quite very.
Yeshiva University still orthodox.
It went, but different levels.
JTS.
When I went to,
what's going on there?
What's going on there? Well, you want to know. Okay. I went from one extreme to the other, as you can see. The orthodoxy was part of my life. Don't forget. My father, when he came over on the boat, in Europe, my father had a beard, a long kapata. He was still, he always was Orthodox. Ultra-Orthodox. And to him, the only thing where you send a boy would be to a very Orthodox school. So that was Torah Vodaas. That's why he said Torah Vodaas. And then, when I said, no, I want to go to Yeshiva University, I called him up. He said, but it was, in other words, it was like, let's put it this way. It was like going to Park Avenue all of a sudden to a more pop Orthodox style, more modern Orthodox. Then going from there, Yeshiva University, I knew I wanted to be a cantor. And I said, where am I going to go to be a cantor? I said, you know what I'm going to do? I can't go to the HUC, which is the Hebrew Union College, which is the Reform, because I don't feel comfortable in the Reform at that time. Now I do so many Reform congregations all the time. But I didn't feel comfortable. So I said, I've got to go to I'll go to the seminary had opened up their school a few years prior, and now that's what happened. So that's how I ended up there, to answer your question, in terms of going from one extreme to the other. Yes, I did have, it wasn't easy for me because I was Orthodox. And then I had to become, when I started becoming a cantor and a professional cantor, I became conservadox. And that's what happened.
So Saul, could you tell us when you made the move from performing as a cantor in synagogues to becoming a recording cantor, when you became a recording artist?
Okay. I went 1966. I decided to go to Israel for the summer. Believe me, I couldn't put two nickels together. But my friend said to me, Saul, I was the cantor here in this synagogue. I already was here, 1966. I used to do I'd say about 400 to 500 weddings a year, performing them myself as the Mesader Kedushin, as the person who did it, over at the Huntington Townhouse, Galaxy, and Leonard's. These are places where you can have 15 weddings going on at one time. So on a Saturday night, I'd get into my tuck, I'd go there, and I'd marry one group after another group. All right? Just one after another. And I decided I want to do concerts. So I spoke to somebody in Israel, and he was a dear friend of mine, Yonatan Yuval, and he said, I'm arranging concerts for you. Anyway, he made up big posters and everything. I come into Israel on a Thursday night. I met at the airport with an entourage of kids and taking pictures and flowers and everything. And I said, Yonatan, tell me, what did you sell out the concert? He says, I'm sorry to tell you, Saul. He says, we only sold 50 tickets. What? 50 tickets? The place holds 1,200 seats. Bet Ta'am. How can you do that? I said, this is on a Saturday night concert. I'll tell you what you're going to do, I said to him. You're going to arrange that tomorrow on Friday night and Saturday morning, I daven in Heichal Shlomo, in the big major, the Bet HaKnesset HaGadol in Yerushalayim. And my brother, you arranged to do my younger brother Paul to daven in I think it was Bet Yeshurun, and Saturday for Musaf, we will both come together. By Saturday night, there was standing room only in this concert hall. Okay? That's exactly what happened. That launched the first thing, because you said, where did the recording start? I remember going to the Mojitza Rebbe for Shalosh Seudos, for the third meal on Shabbat, that afternoon, that first weekend. And I remember listening to certain melodies. Not that I put them down, but they were really going around in my head. And I couldn't believe, I said, you know what? I said to my younger brother, Paul, we're going to make a record. So that was, and I used the name, instead of Zimmelman, I used Zimmel. And we put out our first album called The Zimmel Brothers. And it was Saul and Paul singing mozhitze nigunim, but they weren't, not all of them. About 4 or 5 of them were, and the rest were melodies that I had composed. For example, Kadishayenu b'mitzvotecha v'tichalkayenu b'toratecha Sabeinu mituvelcha v'samcheinu b'shuvatecha. I put that one on, and I also wrote Adonolam asher molach b'terem kol yitzir nivra yeit nasa v'chefzo kol azay melech shemon nikra. Those are 2 of the ones. There were a lot of them that a lot of other ones that I put on there and that I wrote. But there were about 6 of them that were mozhitz and nigunim. Because as I told you before, a lot of this came out of my bones. So I was able to take things that I thought I heard and put it into song. Then we came back after being in Israel, did our first Carnegie Hall concert. Yes.
The first record was released
through Tikva Records.
In the United States.
Tikva Records, I'm sure you know what they are.
Could you tell us, before we get to the next stage, the next part, could you tell us about Tikva Records and what your interaction was?
Yes, Tikva Records came to us. And Alan Jacobs. And he said, I heard you were a sensation. You did a great job in Israel. Because 11 concerts came after that first concert within a matter of 6 weeks that we were there. 11 concerts. So he said, make a record. I said, Paul, we're gonna make a Hasidic album. I started writing it out, started writing all, and by the way, on that record, you have all my friends. I didn't put a choir on that record. I put my friends, all cantors, on them. I gave them these melodies, and they started all singing them.
Was there a band?
There was a band, and Art Raymond, the tummeler of WEVD, said, this is what I need. I need music with orchestra. All right? Jacobs paid for it.
You recorded it where?
We recorded it, I don't remember the name of the studio, in New York somewhere. In a studio in New York. Live. Orchestra and singing at the same time.
Have you heard of the label before, or was it?
Yes, because Tikva Records was the only one doing some Jewish albums at the time. And Tikva and Menorah was putting out of here and there, was putting out some stuff. But he wasn't paying for it. I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford to put out anything. So that was the first album.
Do you have any clue what happened to Alan Jacobs? Is he still around?
No, he died. I do remember when many years ago, he did die, and he had some. I'm sure you've seen all his albums, okay? And they were really. He was such a nice guy, and he loved Jewish music, and so he put it out. He didn't make a lot of money on Jewish records, believe me, he didn't, but he loved it. And Menorah. Now he was the one who was investing. If you went to him, some people put up their own money, but most of the people, if he liked you, he put it up, and he paid for everything. Because I didn't have any money. I had one young kid at home, 2 young kids at home, and I was a poor chassan at the time, trying to struggle and trying to live in this neighborhood because I moved into this neighborhood already.
How did it feel to your esteem to have a vinyl album?
It felt good because it was being played and being bought constantly. That first album, as you know, people sing a lot of those melodies everywhere. These are very popular melodies. It's probably one of my is the first album, and then then the Zimmel brothers were not together for a few years. So Well, there was my brother felt that he didn't want to sing as a like a duet and do popular things and do that kind of stuff. He wanted to be a straight cantor. I said, wonderful. He left me. So actually, when he left me, don't forget, I used to do a lot of concerts by myself too. And I did a lot of more classic. Oh, I'm 21, 22, 23. I used to go, I did for the Opera Ring, the Verband, for all of these places hired me to do concerts for them. And on a weekly basis. From the time that I did Israel and came back, I stopped doing weddings because I was getting so busy doing concerts. Okay? That's what happened. That's what launched it, going to Israel the first time. I came back, and after my brother left me and said he wanted to be a cantor, and I said, okay, you know what? Fine. Then I started getting interested in opera. I started to decide, you know what? I'm going to study opera. I'm about 22, 23, and I went day, night, morning, noon. I slept, ate, drank opera. I got but it's like my wife said, a new mishigas, okay? A new project. I went into it full force. I had studied, I had auditioned. I decided after 3 years, because I was studying voice and studying with the best, not the best voice teachers yet, but the best coaches, because that's a different angle. And these coaches said to me, you know what? I would like to, I think you should try out for opera. You should go into it. I said, okay. And who were my idols? Tucker and Pierce. Richard Tucker and Jan Pierce. And I became very friendly with them. I got to know them well. And I started idolizing them like I idolized Koussevitzky's. Okay? And so, in fact, I'll never forget, I decided I studied about 23 operas. Elisa d'Amore, Don Giovanni, Don Pasquale, Gianni Schicchi, Traviata, Bohème, Rigoletto, all of the major operas, and I went and I auditioned. I auditioned in Vienna. Why did I audition in Vienna? I decided I wanted to make my first album. And I didn't have the money to make my first album. I went and I borrowed $10,000 that time, which was a lot of money. And I went to 2 people who were in my congregation. And I said, you'll have this back in 6 months without interest. And they gave me the money. I went to Vienna, dual purpose, to record 2 albums and to audition. I auditioned for the Vienna Staatsoper. I got myself a contract. I came home with 2 album reels, full, ready to publish, and with a contract. And I told my wife, you know what, June, that's what I want to do. And she figured nothing's happening. And I went right away and I auditioned for a job in Chicago as the cantor just for the High Holy Days. And I was going to be able to make, just for the High Holy Days, for 3 days, what I was making here on a yearly salary. in my congregation, Hollis Hills Jewish Center. And she said, then she realized I was being very serious. I said, we're going to move the kids. Where are the kids going to go to school? A German school. German school? My kids? Our kids? She packed my bags. And she said, go. Not me. And she started speaking to a lot of my friends and saying, convince them not to go. I said, well, she says, you'll be a broken down singer like half of the other ones who go and they don't make it and you don't make it. And what's the purpose? You're dragging your kids. There's no reason for you to do this. You're doing very well here. You're building your career here. Do it here. So you know what? I thought it over. I said, you know what? She said, you'll be a vagabond. And my wife is strong, but she's, again, sweet. That's not that tough. So I thought it over, and with a lot of pressure, I said, okay, but if I do this, I'm going to go pop. That's all of a sudden a new world. So I went from chazanut, heavy, to opera for about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years. And now I'm going pop, and I know nothing about pop. Nothing. I would sing, I want you more. I sang a pop song. I don't know how to sing a pop song. To me, singing a pop song was like the first time I heard Mario Lanza sing, and he was, be my love for no one else. To me, that was like, it was great. I went to every record company, door to door, Atlantic Records, RCA, Columbia, Vanguard. Trying to remember there were so many, London, United Artists, and I got turned down everywhere. I get a call back from United Artists and from London Records. Call back. We're interested. So I come and negotiate. Don't forget, I owe 10 grand. And I want to sell these tapes. I'm selling these tapes to the company. I come back and United Artists says, the guy was Mike Lipton. He was the VP of sales. He says, I can sell this all over the country. He loved it. He says, got it. Because he was a Jewish boy. And he's, you know what, I'm going to, Jan Pierce was with United Artists at that time. That's where he was. And he was going to Vanguard. I, don't forget, was very close with Jan. And I knew that this was happening too. So when Mike Lipton said, he says, we're going to have to change your name. We're going to do everything. We can't, because it can't be Saul Zimmel. I said, but the Jewish record, you have to put out a Saul Zimmel because no one knows me. And they don't know what other name you're going to give me. So anyway, they got me an A&R man, changed my name, Sebastian King. That was the name. Can you imagine? Sebastian King. And I sold it to United Artists. I immediately, after 4 months, I was able to give back all the money.
And what were the songs on that record?
The songs on that record are, I think, right here. Mamala, Jewish medley, Roshinkis mit Mandlin with Ich will sie spielen. Tell me where can I go? Adudala, my Yiddish Meidala, Shashtil macht nicht kein Gerieder. As der Rebbe est, a Chazendel of Shabbos, der Rebbe Elimelech, a Din Teure mit Gott, and a Zemer. It was a Yiddish album. That's what I sold them the first time.
Why did they make you change your name if this is a song?
It was under Saul Zinn. I have the original thing. You'll see. You'll see it.
Why did they make you change your name to Sebastian King?
Because they wanted to make. because they loved my voice. They had me singing it every 2-3 weeks. I was at a jukebox dinner where they had all of these guys, and all of the big Chubby Checkers was there, and 2 or 3 other guys that were these were pop stars. Me, I didn't know how to sing pop.
You were singing in Yiddish and all these things.
No, I did Exodus. Because on my other album, it's not here. Gershon Kingsley did my arrangements. It cost me, don't forget, between my arrangements and the car fare, and I took the whole entourage to London. I just took a chance. I knew I would be able to do it. I pounded the beat.
But just so I'm clear, on the Sebastian
King
record, the song...
There was no Sebastian King record. They put out a record under Saul Zim for the Yiddish. I convinced them. Okay? They, at that time, said, and they gave me $15,000. I made $5,000 on the deal. I was able to pay back and make money on it.
What did they have you singing at the jukebox luncheon?
I sang Exodus. I sang Tell Me Where Can I Go in English. Da-da-da-da-da-da. I also sang in English the mother song, Mamala. Mamala, Mamala, Mother dear, I'll always call you Mamala. That's what they had me sing.
So what did you think?
But it was voice. All it showed was sound.
What did you think was going to happen with you?
I'll tell you what the idea was.
Big idea.
Mike Lipton was the VP there of sales, and he said, look, we are looking right now for somebody to do the Fiddler on the Roof. It was coming out right about that time. We are looking for someone, and I think you would be the right guy, and I'm going to push for it. Well, a year and a half into my contract, Liberty Records bought the UA label. Okay? And when Liberty Records bought UA label, I was like, goodbye. Because I wasn't doing any hits. I was like a catalog person. And I understood that. So anyway, but then I got smart, and I was very smart in one thing. I said that any album I do with you, if you do not sell it, and I don't see it's out in the boxes after 5 years, I'm allowed to put it out. And that's what I did.
And is that when you started Zimray Records?
I started Zimray immediately.
Was it upsetting?
No, I'm not I never wanted to, I didn't care whether I'm a star or not, I really don't. I'll be honest with you. I'm not, people may think that I'm I have that kind of an ego. I know what I do. I want to do the best. I want to do it well, and I want to be the best at what I do. Period. Fame comes. If it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, I'm happy doing what I do. I love what I do. I have no regrets that I didn't do opera, that I didn't go into it, because at every one of my concerts, I sing one piece of opera for me. And they love it. It gets the biggest hand. I do Nessun Dorma at a lot of my concerts. I do Kegeli da Madina. I do a Solo Mio. I do a lot of things, the popular things, and they love it.
On so many of the records that you did that included, on the covers, included your family on them, but many of the records were linked, obviously, to specific holidays. Could you talk a little bit, maybe on the more marketing end of what you saw? Were those obviously strategic decisions? Correct.
Because I had a friend who said to me, Saul, why don't you make records that I said, don't just do Jewish albums. It's shifting. And who was that friend? Art Raymond. Art Raymond said to me, Saul, why don't you do holiday records? I said, very good idea. And I took that and I ran with it. I started doing, my first one was Hanukkah. It was not only did I used to sell, I sold thousands of these records. You know why? Because I got to know the owner of Caldor Stores, who had 185 or 200 stores. He immediately put them into every store. Every store took 10. He sold them out. I was making money selling Jewish records, which is crazy. Yes, I do sell records. I used to sell records. I sell records at concerts. I don't sell Jewish bookstores. And why? Because they're very slow in paying. And I don't want to run after people. I haven't got the time. And I have people who sell my stuff for me. Now I sell online. Now everything is sold online. But Jewish records Jewish CDs today are not even rarely sold in stores. Some of them, maybe in the older, like in Florida or maybe in certain parts of California. The record business is going, the vinyl business is going out, or the CD even. Now it's downloads.
Many of the records you did over time tended to correspond to whatever the style or the sound was of a particular era. Could you tell us specifically about the history of the David Superstar album?
Well, okay. That was unusual. My sons were the influence of David Superstar. At least they were the germ of it. They said to me, Saul, I want you to, Dad, we're singing all these Jewish songs and you never do anything rock. I said, okay, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? She said, well, let's do some rock stuff. So I said, great idea. Nobody had done a rock service yet. The only other one who I knew was writing a rock service was Gershon Kingsley. Okay? So I said, okay, I'll do it. And now that was a real, very major learning point for me. I took fake books. I had to learn how a pop song, it was like going to kindergarten for me in the pop world. But I did it. I became very, very well versed in the pop chords. I started learning it because I really never played piano, but I learned I know what to do. So I learned the pop chords. I learned everything. And it took me about a year. And I wrote the rock service. And it was very extreme at the time. Very extreme.
So what year was it?
You know what? Let me see. I'll tell you. 74.
Were there rock records you were listening to help inspire you and give you ideas?
I listened to yes, I always listened to pop sounds. I used to listen to all kinds of everything. I don't remember the Zeppelin. I had every pop, and how did I get to listen to these people? Through my sons. They had their records, and they brought it home, and so I would listen to that era, and it was unusual for me to hear because I wanted to hear what they were doing. When I hear it, I hear what they're doing musically, and I say, you know what, that's not a bad idea. And then it's also a different style of singing. It's completely different singing. That's why, and then I started going to some coaches to learn what to do with pop because I knew nothing about it. I knew how to do opera. I knew how to do chazanut. I didn't know pop. So I started learning the entire world. Don't forget, when I went, I was this way. My first thing was very, very much classics. Stood at a concert like this. Carnegie Hall was like this. Town hall like this. Israel was like this. And now it's a different world. It opened up a whole... I had to learn a lot of new things.
Give us an example.
Well, I started singing, Dici t'ancella sta compagna vostra, che ho perduto il suono e fantasia. Ah, voglia bene, ah, voglia bene assai. It's a different feel. Let's say even in Italian.
Is that the rock star?
No, not the rock. That was the starting to do like a Vegas act. I put that together. I put together a Vegas and Atlantic City. That I started putting together an act.
And did you perform in Vegas?
Only the first time. It wasn't. I'll tell. That's another story. I'll give a very unusual story.
When you would put together the Atlantic City act or the idea of the Vegas act, what were some of the different songs or styles you would mix together?
Obladi Oblada from the what do you call it? Yeah, that was one of the songs that I did.
Did you sing a little of that?
I had special lyrics written. They say if you wanna have a lot, I don't want to sing them. I had special lyrics written for that. I had special lyrics done for it was all a very specialized type of thing.
Who wrote them?
You remember there was a group called Sandler and Young. All right? This is when my brother Paul had decided he wants to go back with me. So I said, okay.
Why did you invite him back?
Well, my wife actually brought him back. My wife said, Saul, she invited him one night to dinner and decided, and I didn't know about it, and I just come in for dinner, and I see my brother Paul, and don't forget, I was going in one direction. I was going with United Artists, and all of a sudden, about 2 years later, this is what happened. All of a sudden, he wants to come in, and I said, okay. It's my brother. Of course, he wants to. I understand he was young when he left me the first time, and so I forgave him, and I understood that. So at that time, I said, if you're going to come back, we're going to go completely pop, because I already got the bug. I got that bug, and this is what I wanted to do. And it seems when I go into something, I go into it full force. And I did it. I said, we're changing our name. Found the name. Instead of Zimmel Brothers, the brothers Zim. Good. We have to have arrangements made by only pros. We're going to go to Vegas. We're going to find out who do you want to do it. We do a brother act. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to get the person who got Key Howard was the writer for Sandler and Young. Key Howard. Unfortunately, he's not alive anymore, but he was a great arranger. He did specialty materials. He put the act together for us at the time. He got somebody in Vegas to do all the orchestrations. We spent the money. Things were a little better for me. I was able to afford a little bit more. And we spent it. It cost a lot of money. It wasn't cheap to put a whole act together. It cost a lot of money. And then, let's see. So, but while that was going on, my brother came back. We worked for about 8 years together. 8 years. Another 8 years together. And, my brother decided he wanted to go on his own. He wanted to become a star on his own. So I said, fine. I felt bad. I tried to convince him otherwise, but I think it was best. Whatever he did, whatever he wanted, it was good. He made a wise choice because he's found his niche and I found my niche. And
what's his niche?
His children's records. He does children's songs.
Did he also do a disco record? I feel like I've heard a...
He did it. He had a guy did a disco record. That's when he wanted to become a star. That's when he was. Everybody likes to be a star. That's when he wanted to go. There was a comedian who convinced him. His name was Shyman. I don't remember exactly his name. He has since died, unfortunately. But he was the one that convinced my brother to, I think, to go and do his own thing and go with him and do concerts with him. Comedian. And he was I'd say about 25, 30 years older than my brother. And that's basically what happened. I think so. I won't know I don't really know because it's a sore subject, and I don't like to bring it up to my brother either. And it's best that we don't, because we're still a family, and because he's very talented. My brother's a talented guy, and and does a very good job. And he found, again, I say he found his niche, children's songs.
Do you think the Brothers Zim will ever be reunited?
Well, it's very. I'm open. I would do it if the Brothers Zim was reunited. It would have to be very soon because the people who knew the Brothers Zim won't be here anymore. There were a lot of people who used to hear the Brothers Zim, and we had a tremendous. I used to do 40 shows up in the Catskills every summer. 40 shows every night, almost in a different place, in a different hotel, major hotels, and you talk. But that was every summer. And every year when I go, not every year, every 2 years. It used to be every year. I used to go down in Florida. I used to hit immediately at least 20,000 people. Concerts. Constantly. Yes, and I do most of my concerts out of town. I go, whether it's Milwaukee, I'm going to be in Vancouver, Seattle, Chicago, everywhere.
And these are both, they're synagogue performances, or they're
both,
theaters?
all different types. I did Chicago. I did the Civic Theater, the Arts Theater in the main area. What's that name of that area? No, not Loop. Loop is downtown. That was the Loop Synagogue, was where I took a high holiday job, where I gave it up for those years, $18,000. It's a lot of money.
What was driving this rock design? You wrote on the back of David Superstar, you wrote, the rock media of our younger generation can be reached en masse.
You know why?
What was driving this rock reinvention?
Because I believed that that was the trigger that made me think that you've got to start reaching the younger generation through what they hear, the style of what they hear. So I started doing even some of my arrangements in a semi-rock, Hasidic rock feel. Even my regular arrangements. I have my Shabbos album is only is jazz rock. It's jazz. I took a guy. In fact, if you listen to Channel 1, New York, the New York station in New York, the guy who if you look at the credits at the end, you'll see the fellow who wrote a lot of the arrangements on here. It says orchestrated by Peter Fish. He's done all the music that's done on there is Peter Fish.
Did you ever get any grief from the cantorial world that you had strayed, that you sold out, that you crossed over?
I'll tell you when I did get grief. I was not even in their minds except for one thing. because I was doing concerts. And they didn't even think of me in terms of cantorial. They thought of me only in terms of my music that they were listening to and learning songs. Like I would listen to Karl Bach, who was my Rebbe. I learned so much from taking it apart, being a diagnostic type of individual that I am, and I took it apart and I say, this is what he did. I grew up with it. I'm going to do the same. I take the same idea and put it into all my music, and I did it, and that's why it works. Every one of the songs that I have actually work. They're always done. So, my point, your question was?
Have you ever considered a kind of a sellout? Or
yes, I was the cantorial. I didn't join the Cantors Assembly. I did not join the Cantors Assembly for many, many years. In fact, they considered me a renegade. Why? You graduated the seminary. You're the only one who didn't join the Cantors Assembly. How dare you? You had a full scholarship to the Cantors Assembly, to the Jewish Theological Seminary. I said, simple. I said, you're going to throw me out because I do this kind of concerts. I did. When did they finally throw me out? Not while I was with my brother, but while I was with my partner, and I started working Atlantic City. I started working for the High Jewish Rollers. Okay? And they would bring me in quite often. And all of a sudden, one of the guys get up at the Cantors Assembly at a meeting, and he says, oh, wait, they got me to join. A friend of mine from Cleveland, who is a guy by the name of Cantor Meisels, he brought me in for a concert once, and he saw what we do. They never knew. He saw what we did at a concert. He said, this is unbelievable. He says, you've got to become a member of the assembly. I said, they're going to throw me. I'm making you a member. Okay, fine. He was that kind of guy. He was past president. I said, okay, make me a member. I became a member. And all of a sudden I hear that I'm working at the Playboy Club in Atlantic City. That was the first place I ever worked, in Atlantic City. So they're thinking I'm running around with bunnies. No, I wasn't running around with bunnies. I was there, the Playboy Club, with Theodore Bickel and Saul Zim. And I did not work on a Friday night either, by the way, because I never would work on Friday evening, because I have respect for what I do. And to me, it would be, I don't want to be a Mechalel Shabbat. So I took the deal whenever I worked there, no Friday nights. Saturday night, an extra show, 2 shows. Sunday, 2 shows. So they were going to throw me out. They were going to so the Cantors Assembly said, we're going to put you on the red carpet. I said, no, you're not. I'll leave. Oh, no, but we need you. We want you. So it was a double-edged sword for them. I said, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't do anything wrong. I don't do anything I only do Jewish music. At the Playboy Club. You should see the Playboy Club. You would have flipped out. So I wasn't put on the red carpet. And I remained a member. And for years at the Cantors Assembly, you should realize that though my music was being done by all the cantors, you know what happened? I used to have 200 cantors around me at every convention. I sat at the piano singing my stuff. They used to have their little tape recorders sitting there because they didn't have any place to get it from. Only from records. But I was giving them stuff that they'd never hear anywhere. More and more, and it was just coming out of me.
Can you explain the genius creativity of antiphonal singing?
Oh yeah, antiphonal singing is very simple. I created it. Le dorvador, le dorvador, le dorvador. That's in second, back and forth. Le dorvador, nagid God lecha. Le dorvador. Or, vehu, yashmienu, berachamav sheini, berachamav sheini, sheini leyehene kolchoi, lihiyot, lachem.
How did you have the genius idea to invent antiphonal singing, and what was it used? Why did it become so popular?
Because I felt that people were sitting like bumps on a log in a synagogue. And I don't want people to just stare and sit there and just be like spectators. I wanted them to be part of. And today they're talking about participation so much in synagogues, right? I started it 35, 40 years ago with all of this antiphonal singing. It's, for example, one of the most popular songs that I've ever written that almost every congregation sings is Le Dorvador. Le Dorvador, Le Dorvador, Le Dorvador, Le Dorvador, Le Dorvador, Nagi God lecha. Le Dorvador, Le Dorvador, Le Dorvador, you repeat. Le Dorvador, I have many examples of that.
You once were quoted as saying, God gave me the gift of melody. I wrote arrangements that you've heard so often in synagogue. You think they come from Sinai. They didn't. I wrote them.
That's true. It's because, what do I mean? What happened was I was not publishing my music. I was interested in doing concerts. I didn't care. I wrote songs. I shared them with everybody, okay? I shared them with anybody and everybody who wanted to I gave my music away. I didn't want to make any money. God was being good to me. I was doing a lot of concerts. I was being successful. Thank God. So all of a sudden I see a piece of music come back to, someone sends to me, hey, did you see one of your songs? It's got somebody else's name on it. Hey, did you see this song? It's got somebody else's name on it. Hey, did you see this? It's got and I know that you wrote it. So I said, you know what? I better start publishing. And my wife pushed me to do that. My wife said, Saul, go, whatever it is, start publishing. I went to Velvel Pasternak. I said, Vel, I want to start putting out books. And I put out my first Joy of Shabbos book. Every melody in there is sung by congregations throughout the world, not only here, but I heard it. This Le Dorvador, I heard it in Germany. Le Dorvador, Le Dorvador, Le Dorvador, Nagid Go Dilecho. Very unusual to hear your music with a German accent in Germany. Wild. So.
One of the stories you told us in the past is that kind of about the history of your performance style with the influence of seeing a particular rock band live on stage.
What was it? I'm trying to remember.
Kiss.
Oh, yeah.
Could you tell us about the influence of Kiss?
Well, the influence was very there. I had never seen this stuff. Don't forget, my sons all of a sudden were into rock music. And their special band was Kiss. I went with them. They said, Dad, I want to go to see it. I said, you know what? Since I'm writing all of this kind of music, I better go with you. They didn't want me to go. They wanted to have fun there, right? I said, okay, I'm going. And we're going to get good seats right up front. And I got excellent seats. And I saw what they did. I was amazed. To see how the pop world was changing and how it was going was like, to me, it was like another world. And I loved their styling. I loved musically what they did. Loved it. It had a little bit of classic in it. It had what I had in my belly, that classic feel and Now, by then, I had already developed a feel for pop. I put it together. I said, you know what? I'm going to try to emulate that styling in a bit. And I did. In some of my stuff, of my, which record? I'll tell you which one. In the Joy of Israel. And also in the other one, which is called, no, only the Joy of Israel. It's got that styling in it.
Did you ever wear makeup?
No, I didn't.
It did affect your clothing.
Yes, clothing. I used to wear all kinds of stuff. I used to wear anything that was different. Anything that was different.
Like what?
Like vests. I always wore a vest, but a leather vest. It was it almost looked like Indian stuff, and it was very different. That was as the brother Zim, but then styles changed, and I went with the style. Jews have migrated from country to country, and their styles have always changed. We've always taken on the style of a new group, of a new area, and this is what the Jewish people are about. I believe that if you want people to, if you want to be in sync with what's going on in the world, not that you change your living habits, but you change the styling of what, if you're a manufacturer, you change. And I changed, became more slick and more, and that was my styling.
You were both saying, I'm a gladiator on stage, I'm a wild man, I'm looking at just like Tom Jones.
Well, no, people tell me that. So I've repeated that. People have told me that I'm very strong on stage, which I am. I hold an audience for 2 hours without a problem. And that vocally I have the ability to go on for a long time and to do gladiator material, whether it's cantoral, pop, Yiddish. I do a Broadway medley. I do a Academy Award medley. I do these things that are very, very, very powerful things.
What's the ultimate high for you?
I mean, you're talking, what's the ultimate high in life?
Publishing,
Oh,
performing, writing, pop, opera,
all of it.
cantorial.
All of it. Every bit of it. I love it. I love everything I do. I am very blessed. God gave me a blessing. And He must have always been watching out for me. I feel very privileged. I feel like there's always been like someone watching over me. You know that picture, someone to watch over you or something like that. I feel He watches over me because I still have so many things that I want to do. I want to write more. I have probably 100 books under my piano. I have about another 50 of them upstairs. When I'm gone, people will be going through all my archives, my manuscripts. They will be looking at and they will say, you know what? Maybe we should go through his manuscript. We'll find a lot more, because there is so much stuff that I haven't published.
When you look back at this incredible legacy that you just laid out for us, are there things that you look back on and you think that you have a little regret about? Are there regrets? Are there moments you would have handled differently?
Not one. Yeah, I would have. I'll tell you, there's only one. When I was with United Artists, I wish that I would have had the opportunity to continue on and that they were not taken over by Liberty Records. I wish I would have had that opportunity because when I started learning pop, I didn't know it was too late for me to be in there. I should have been ready to go in there. I wasn't ready for them. Yes, they bought my records. They liked what I did. Yes, they sold their records. They made their money back. And I was told that. But I have no other regret. That's the only regret that I feel I wasn't in life, that I wasn't ready for. Musically, to handle the challenge. I could have, because I've been ready for almost any challenge that I could take on. To me, you must strive for perfection in anything you do. And anything you do, whether it's on stage, whether it's in writing, in composition, you strive to create something that not only the public wants, but you have to be happy with it. People may not be happy with it, but that may be their style. If you believe in something, do it. And that's really been my motto in what I've taken on my entire life. I've lived it in a very positive level, never negative. But yes, it's not a regret that I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I went on. I'm doing what I love. I love Jewish music, and it will be, after I'm gone, many years, whether it's through archival media or whatever it will be there for hundreds of years, and I know that.
What will your legacy be?
My legacy will be mostly my music. I think mostly my music. My legacy will be because I was the pioneer in making congregational singing. I mean, many people may think it's and they're very good. In the Reform movement, we have a Debbie Friedman and a Taubman, and you have and those two, and then you have and the first one was Karlbach. To me, he was a genius in terms of getting to the soul. Koussevitzky, another idol of mine, was a genius in creating an explosive style of singing. Jan Pierce had such a beautiful sound. These were my models. These were people who I believed should be emulated. And I'm sure there are going to be people who, not that I want them to emulate me, but they will use my music for many years.
Will there be another Soul Zip?
If there probably could be, if they take the same, in other words, not every job you go after, not everything you do is positive. I've been turned away many times. When I went to 17 different record companies I didn't care if you said no to me. I just go to the next one. Don't spit in my face, because I will succeed. And I know I will succeed. I'll find a way to succeed. And that's what you have to do.
Which album are you most proud of?
I think every album I did was a different level of my life. A different level in life. Different style. I'm just recording stuff in Israel. Cantorial stuff, which I love. And that's why, it's amazing that I fit into the ultra-Orthodox, the pop Orthodox. It's amazing that on my own brain.
If you had to pick one.
I'll tell you what I do love. I love my Celebration album, but I also love very much my Passover album, because it was very innovative, very ultra innovative. My rock album was innovative, but I wasn't even ready for it to sing it. If I have the tracks downstairs in my basement. I have all tracks of all my albums. If I sang them over again, they would even be better, because I know so much more. Because, in Yiddish, there's an old expression when they say, "Ich hab nicht gepockt und gemuzzelt." In other words, it's a Yiddish idiom. It means that you haven't lived enough. But not that I've lived enough. God should give me many more years. I feel that there is so much more for me to learn and to do. I never have enough hours of the day to do it. That's my problem. Just want you to... Hi, my name is Saul Zim, and this is my story.